I call this Planning Commission meeting to order on Tuesday, May 24th, 2022 at 6:01 p.m. I will now read the COVID protocol notice. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of Government Code Section 54-953 as amended by AB 361, which authorizes teleconference meetings under the Brown Act during certain proclaimed states of emergency. The Governor of California proclaimed a state of emergency related to COVID-19 on March 4, 2020. This teleconference meeting is necessary so the town can conduct essential business and is permitted under Government Code 54-953 in order to protect public health and the safety of attendees. And now I will do a roll call vote. Vice Chair Luster is not here this evening. Commissioner Bodie.
Here.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye, present.
Commissioner Helber does not look like he's here. Commissioner Polsky.
Present.
Commissioner Teal.
Here.
And I, Chair Hillis, am here. We are also joined by Town of Moraga staff. We have Planning Director Hamid and the voice that told us that we could start the meeting. I didn't hear the name, so I apologize.
I'm the Administrative Assistant for our Planning Department.
I still didn't quite catch that, but good to have you here. We also have Brian Horn, Chief Isaacs from MOFD, and then our consultant Barry Miller and Mark Summers, who I believe is with Public Works. Yes. Okay. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Do any of our commissioners have a conflict of interest to report? Commissioner Teal.
Yeah, I do believe due to proximity of our residence at 956 Bollinger Canyon Road, I do believe I need to recuse myself from this evening's discussion on the Bollinger Canyon.
Okay, thank you.
Point of clarification, Director Hamid?
Yes,
Typically, we recuse ourselves if our residence is within just a couple of 100 feet of a subject property. Is that accurate?
yes,
So if Commissioner Teal was more than a couple 100 feet away, he would not need to do that, would he?
he's within the conflict radius, so he will recuse himself when the item comes up as agenda item 6B.
Correct.
So
Thank
he
you.
can stay and he can participate in the meeting, and for 6A, then he will recuse himself for 6B, leave the meeting, and then come back for routine and other matters.
We will miss you, Graham.
Looking forward to rejoining. Thank you.
Okay, no other conflicts to report. We can move on. Contact with the applicants. We don't really have any applicants, but do any of the commissioners have any relevant contacts they'd like to report? Commissioner Polsky.
I have known Ted Bruzoni, who is the grandson of Joan and nephew of Dave, for a couple of years now, and recently, actually following our last education session, reached out to him to reintroduce myself and have a conversation. Not a ton of business was actually discussed. He was fairly tight-lipped, which I think is the MO for the family. But I did want to say that I had met with him, and yeah, that was it. We had drinks at Canyon Club and bought our own drinks.
Thank you, sir. Anything else to report from any other commissioners? I did have contact with Dave Bruzoni on a matter unrelated to tonight's proceedings, but just full disclosure. And now we'll move to Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Bodie, would you mind doing the Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
Certainly.
I will just share my screen momentarily. Just give me a moment.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Bodie, I'm not sure if there's an issue with your microphone or if it was on my end, but I was catching every other word, but we'll see if that continues on as the proceedings progress. So next in our agenda, we have, public comments. This time is reserved for those in the audience who wish to address the Planning Commission. The audience should be aware that the commission may not discuss details or vote on non-agenda items. Your concerns may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. Note, public input will also be taken during each agenda item. If there are any public comments at this time, please utilize the raise hand feature of the webinar. We will call on you. Please remember to state your name and address for the record. You will have 3 minutes. And again, for this period or for this public comment, I request that it's for items that are not on our agenda tonight. And let me see if I see any hands raised. We have 7 attendees, but I don't see any hands raised for this portion. So I assume that means they're here for the items later in the meeting. Adoption of the consent agenda. We don't have any items on consent tonight. Adoption of the meeting agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Davis. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Bodie. And I will call the roll. Vice Chair Luster is not here. Commissioner, let's see, Commissioner Bodie.
Yes.
Commissioner Davis.
Here. Aye.
Commissioner Polsky.
Aye.
Commissioner Teal.
Aye.
Commissioner Helber is not here, and Chair Hillis is aye. So motion passes. Now moving on to public hearings. So moving to the first item in under 6, conduct a public hearing to review the proposed fiscal year 2022-2023 capital improvement program for consistency with the Moraga General Plan. Staff, is there a presentation?
Yes, I do have a brief presentation.
All right, please proceed.
All right, good evening, Chair Hillis and Planning Commissioners. I'm Brian Horn, Associate Planner. So the CIP aims at improving the town's public infrastructure. It's a multi-year planning instrument used as a guide for project prioritization to accomplish community goals. The CIP reflects projects introduced to the town council through various means, such as through adopted master plans, studies, upgrades and repair of town facilities, and projects necessary to comply with statutory requirements, such as the American Disabilities Act. They include fiscal improvements as well as long-range planning efforts for the 5-year CIP period. The CIP is created as part of the annual budget process. It is the planning document through which the town identifies the capital projects that should be funded in the annual budget and identifies a tentative list of projects to fund 3 to 5 years in the future. The town council considers a draft CIP, provides direction to staff on modifications, and adopts the final CIP. The projects are selected for inclusion in the upcoming fiscal year program based on needs and available resources, with many reflecting a continuation of efforts begun in prior fiscal years. State law requires the Planning Commission to review the CIP for conformance with the general plan. The CIP was evaluated by staff for compliance with the town's general plan, as shown in the table in attachment B of the staff report. All the projects have been determined to comply with or further applicable general plan policies. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission find the proposed capital improvement program is consistent with the general plan, provided that future CIP projects continue to consolidate related projects to ensure projects are comprehensively planned and designed consistent with the general plan policies. And new development projects may be required to construct, repair, or install improvements identified in the CIP as part of the development review process. And recommend the town council approve the CIP with the above mentioned notes. The Planning Commission is invited to provide their input on the CIP's conformance with the general plan. Additionally, Mark Summers, the town's associate engineer, is here tonight and available for any questions regarding the projects. And that concludes the staff's report.
So I would just, through the chair, like to make a comment. The town council did review the staff report for a draft 5-year CIP on April 27th. The CIP is part of an annual budget process. And tonight's focus for the Planning Commission is consistency with the general plan. And I will let Mark Summers make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Afsha. I think Brian covered everything. We didn't actually have a separate presentation for this. It was mainly just to introduce the CIP for this year. This does not include the full 5-year projected CIP, but only the CIP projects for this year. And so in the interest of time this evening, we were just going to introduce it, hoping that the staff report and attachment have the information you needed, and we'd be here for questions if you needed.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff from our commissioners on the CIP? I did have a couple, but I wanted to let others raise any questions before going. But if there are no questions, I just had a couple. One, Director Hamid, I'd asked your predecessor questions about there was evidence of a crosswalk that used to exist from the movie theater to the shopping center right across the way that has a town bakery and Chinese food restaurant. And I noticed that there were several items in the CIP that seemed to fit, notably on page 3, safety improvements. I believe there was another one, livable Moraga Road, just because I know that we have approved at the commission an expansion of the movie theater. We've also heard in other discussions about the potential for more housing across the street from the movie theater. And I'm wondering whether or not I did hear from prior Director Farmer that it was somewhere in the plan to restore the crosswalk there. I'm just wondering if that's captured in any of these items.
So the items that are presented before you tonight have been developed through a process with staff input, multiple departments, and also going to council. So in the future, if there is a direction from a crosswalk that comes through policy from council, then that could include it. But I also want to point out at this time, we don't have a development across the street. So there may be opportunities in the future when there's a development to ask for some kind of conditions of approval or mitigation. But right now we don't have anything. We're just considering the housing element and rezoning. So, and tonight's request is something that's already gone to council. And we're just asking for consistency with the general plan.
Got it. It's a question that I had meant to ask you earlier when we spoke, Director Hamid. It just slipped my mind, but I saw it here in my notes. And I think I had remembered hearing previously that it was included in one of these projects, but it's now some years after that, it still hasn't taken place. So one of the reasons for my question. And I want to explain that it may have come up prior to me, but I know that the Ream parcel did not agree to construct a sidewalk and a crosswalk. And the Ream sidewalk is unfunded and it's unscheduled. Got
it. I could speak a little bit just to the location of that particular crosswalk, and I'm not familiar with what former Director Farmer mentioned to you. Commissioner Hillis, but that's, you know, what's called a mid-block crosswalk, and it's actually a street where cars drive quite quickly. So it's a dangerous place to put a crosswalk. And normally when we do that, we would have some kind of overhead flasher, something that would really get cars' attention, because people tend to have a sometimes false sense of security in a crosswalk when on a road like that, where it could be really dangerous. So just to add that.
Had to dodge traffic at one point to when we were still doing meetings in person. So I think it was one of the reasons why I raised the question initially. The other that I had that came up in my conversation with Director Hamid is regarding the appropriateness, and I understand it's not appropriate necessarily to put to request that the town consider a ball field for consideration in the CIP, but I understood that there would be some process that we could talk about those types of things in the future. And Director Hamid, I was just hoping that you could let us know what those opportunities would be.
Yeah, I don't have a date yet, but I do know that through the Parks and Rec Open Space Plan, there will be a discussion with commissions on developing a recommendation for Palos funding. So at that time, there may be some discussions, but of course, any discussions must also be tied to some kind of funding and agreements with developers. So tonight's focus again is just consistency with the general plan and what's before you that was already presented to council.
Great. Those are my two questions. And I see that Commissioner Davis has a question.
I know that our plan doesn't hold a lot of standards or specifications in the plan itself. I make the assumption it references them by connection and note. I'm curious about our paving standards. We have a lot of paving planned. We have a paving plan in the general plan. We have paving plan in this cycle. I have noticed that some of the paving we do leaves roads in worse condition than they were before we started. I would specifically note Canyon Road between Moraga Way and Camino Pablo. I asked about that a few months ago and never got a response. So I'm going to ask now, what's the point of spending millions of dollars in paving if we can't do a respectable job of paving?
Well, I can speak a little bit to the paving. I don't think I'd necessarily agree that we've left streets worse. But what I would say, particularly about that stretch, and there was a section on St. Mary's Road, we've done some temporary fixes because those are arterials. We are looking for grant funds for those streets. They're much more expensive.
So the plan for Canyon Road is that we're doing more, we're not complete.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, those were intended to be temporary patches to keep it from getting worse in certain spots.
Okay, the slurry seal on Canyon Road southbound could only be described as a temporary patch.
Oh, I'm sorry, the slurry seal. So I might be misunderstanding which portion you were talking about. Can you
invite you to take a drive down that section of road in a pickup truck and try to hold a cup of coffee. You'll be challenged, I promise.
Yeah, okay, I do understand.
It's worse than it was 2 years ago before it was paved.
And this is, can you repeat the section of Canyon Road again?
Southbound Canyon Road between Moraga Way and Camino Pablo, particularly the left hand of the two lanes, right in adjacent Moraga Royale.
And okay, I believe there's a section that is slurried there, but there's a section that's not as well. Isn't there a section?
Specifically, the slurried section, the one we actually paid good money to work on, is the worst.
I can speak a little bit to slurry and what the purpose of doing that is, and it's not meant to be a long-term fix, but perhaps 5 years, and it's really to keep infiltration, is to seal it.
Yep.
So a lot of it has to do with available funds at the time, what the needs are. I don't have the
So
pavement.
Engineer Summers, I recommend that you take a look at that section of road.
So through the chair, we're happy to take a look and get back and respond.
Thank you, Director
But at
Hamid.
this
That's all I
point,
ask.
this is again, consistency with the general plan. We're not looking into any specific project.
Okay, so Director Hamid, I prefaced this question of Engineer Summers with what is the point in spending the money to pave if we do an incompetent job of doing so?
So
That
we're
is
not
not
discussing
consistent with
the
the plan.
merits of any one project or the quality. We're discussing the consistency findings with the general plan tonight, and that is the focus.
We are also discussing, because I asked, what our specs and standards are for paving.
That's not on the agenda tonight. We're
We
happy
don't
to
have
have a
any-
separate discussion
no
regarding
specs.
specs with you.
We have no specs or standards within
No,
our
that's
general plan.
not, specs are not on the discussion or part of the agenda tonight.
We make no reference to Caltrans specs in our general plan.
So if you would like, I could discuss the process, or if we could take, if you prefer, Director Hamid, if we take this offline, I can too. We could go through the process of how streets are chosen and how the treatments are chosen. I don't know if that would be worth going into during this meeting, but I'd be happy to do it.
I think it's an interesting conversation. Is it possible for you to give us the Cliff Notes version and potentially take any more detail offline?
Cliff Notes version, all the streets are rated with what's called a pavement condition index. It's a PCI. You've probably heard reference to that in the past if you've heard about our pavement management program. And, always talking about what the average level is, 70, trying to get the streets up to 70 or above the average PCI. So they're all rated. That provides kind of an initial take of what the appropriate treatments are for various streets. So depending on the PCI rating, ones that are very low, say a slurry is not the appropriate treatment, those you need to maybe do a full overlay. So once we have kind of the idea of what kinds of treatments we have, we work directly with our consultants, pavement experts, to come up with plans. We're also constrained by budget, of course. So we're trying to get the most bang for our buck is what we're often trying to do. And right now we're kind of working on a worst streets first program because there are a number of streets that have not been done for many years. So that's our current focus, is to get to the worst streets, which are the ones with the lowest PCI rating. But there's a lot more to it. I'd be happy to provide more information on that. If that would be a
Engineer
help.
Summers, this
Yeah.
plan that we're going to review and approve tonight as consistent with the general plan, what are the standards to which we are planning?
Well, we usually, there are standards in terms of quality standards.
Quality standards as directed by whichever state agency we're under for paving roads.
So we're in terms of specifications, we're usually using Caltrans specifications.
I was pretty sure of that. Yes, everybody does. That
Well-
road does not meet Caltrans spec, did not meet it after it was first paved, and could have been remedied when you still had a leash on that contractor. If we're going to approve the expenditure of money in alignment with our general plan, I want to know that we will collectively be doing the quality assurance that goes with spending that money. Otherwise, I won't approve the general plan.
Commissioner Davis, if I might, it sounds like Commissioner Summers, this is the the first you may be hearing of the condition here. I think I heard you say that you were going to look into it yourself. And then I would say if you can follow up with Commissioner Davis on that specific stretch of road to let him know what the any potential resolution that needs to be had there. And then Commissioner Davis, when we at our next meeting, if you have had that report back, if you can just let us know in reports what the disposition of that is.
I'd be happy to do so, Chair Hillis. Thank you.
Okay, just for my sake, specifically, what can you give me some direction of what you would like me to get to you in the
Yes,
interim?
surface deviation.
Surface deviation.
It's nicely coated, but it is such an irregular surface that it meets no standard I'm aware of in the Western world.
It sounds like it's whether or not it's in compliance with the standard that the general plan holds it to, which is
Sure, and we're talking Moraga Way to Camino Pablo.
On southbound, particularly
Southbound.
southbound Country Club, Canyon Road. Apologize.
Okay, so particularly surface deviation standards, quality standards.
Mhm.
And that's-
Which
that's-
would include ponding and
Mhm.
ridging.
So very
um,
specifically the surface deviation. Okay, I'll do my best
Thank
to
you.
get you, then I'll get you what I can.
And then Director Summers, if there's any
Thank you.
follow-up that's necessary, just for more specifics, follow up offline. Commissioner Davis, is that resolve your concern for tonight? on that?
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. Any other questions from commissioners on the CIP? Hearing nothing, so I believe that we do have a resolution. Let's see, we do.
We need to open it up to the public.
Yes, let's open up for public comment. I think that most of the public here is likely here for the next item. So seeing none, do I have, is there any other discussion the commissioners would like to have on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Bodie?
Second.
Well, I think Commissioner Bodie, I think you have to read off page 1 of the resolution, the little part that's in bold.
Can somebody put it up on their screen? I didn't print that out.
I can read it. You can, I think, and we can say that that was your motion.
Love it.
Finding the proposed capital improvement program is consistent with that of the Moraga General Plan, provided that A, future CIP projects continue to consolidate related projects to ensure projects are comprehensively planned and designed consistent with the general plan policies, and excuse me, B, new development projects may be required to construct, repair, or install improvements identified in the CIP as part of the development review process, and recommend the town council approve the proposed CIP with the above mentioned notes. Was that your motion, Commissioner Bodie?
That's my motion, indeed. Thank you, Carrie.
I think we had a second.
Yes. I'll second.
Second
Okay.
from Commissioner Polsky. And now we will do a roll call vote. Vice Chair Luster is not here. Commissioner Bodie,
Yes.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Helberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Polsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Teal. Did we lose him? I think we lost Commissioner Teal. And I, Chair Hillis, am an aye. The resolution passes. And we can move to our next item, which is to conduct a study session to review proposed draft general plan amendments and zoning regulations for Bollinger Canyon Study Area and provide input. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
So I would like to make some opening comments.
Please.
This is part of a town council goal and objective, and it has been for the last several years. As part of the housing element, council made this a priority and also added a budget to address this. There was a prior, so tonight what we're doing is really just taking what has been a study area for 40+ years and creating consistency and creating a process for review. And we are folding this as part of the advanced planning initiative so that we can assign a zoning to it, which is also part of the general plan policies.
With stimulants. Here's a read.
Whoops, it's a recent goal from council. We started with a white paper and a neighborhood meeting back in January, at the end of January. It went to council for policy direction, so it's already been to council. Council provided policy directions for the 3 parcel areas. Since that, staff has also had some one-on-one meetings and emails with some of the residents and property owners in that area. For tonight, what we are doing is we are reviewing the draft language and making a recommendation to council. It will go before council tomorrow evening. And again, council will review the draft language. Once the EIR is released, all this will come back to you for a final review in the fall of 2022. And we will do the rezoning at that time. Staff has done extensive outreach, courtesy notices to property owners. We've done emails. I visited the site today, not the entire site, but a portion of the site. We are engaging with Barry Miller Consultants, who's here tonight to make the presentation and provide more details on a new proposed zoning area called residential, rural residential. Thank you. I would also like to note that Ben Helber, Commissioner Helber, joined the meeting, I believe, approximately at 6:27 tonight.
Thank you. And I think Barry Miller is sharing his presentation now.
Yes, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Commission, and thank you, Director Hamid, for the introduction and the context. I will probably skip the first couple of slides because I think they are mostly what you've covered. Let me just do a full screen here. And before I begin, just wanted to acknowledge Aaron Welch, who is not able to be here this evening, but who did much of the work on the Bollinger Canyon study area zoning and is the primary author of the white paper that was linked to your agenda packet. Afsha, I think, spoke about the content that you see on the screen, that we're now working on one component of an initiative that has many moving parts, including the housing element and a focused update of the general plan and the complete EIR. This is the timeline that Afsha just went through. I also want to reiterate that there is no specific project under consideration. There's no development application that's active in this area. This is a zoning and general plan amendment. And there is no final decision that will be made at this meeting this evening. This is a study session to take public comment and to answer commissioner questions and to receive feedback that we can bring to the city, to the town council. So just for context, we're talking about a 423 acre area on the central east part of Moraga. This is the study area outlined in red, and you can see with relation to the Ream Center and Moraga Center, and then again, just east of St. Mary's College is the study area that we're talking about. The town of Lafayette, or city of Lafayette, is immediately to the north, and unincorporated Contra Costa County is immediately to the east. So this is the town limit line right on the eastern edge of the property. There are 20 parcels in the study area, and those 20 parcels are owned by 13 individual parties. A majority of the land area is in a handful of larger parcels, as you can see here in this diagram. You can see the parcels have been labeled with letters from A through T, and that's really more for just ease of reference when we're talking about individual parcels within the study area. So we thought it would be helpful to provide some historic context before we get into the zoning proposal. This is actually a zoning map from prior to the town of Moraga's incorporation in 1974. And this is the county zoning that applied at the time. And you can see R15, that's 15,000 square foot lots, which is roughly 3 dwelling units per acre. That was the zoning that applied to most of the study area. There's also some R20, which is 20,000 square foot lots, or about 2 units per acre. The town incorporated in 1974. And at that point in time, the study area was given the designation study. And that is embedded in the general plan, both from the beginning of Moraga's, from the first general plan to the updated general plan in 2002. That study designation has remained on the general plan map, and there are some parameters that go along with that. This is the current zoning context for the property, or for the properties that comprise the 423 acre study area. As I mentioned, the zoning designation is study, which was intended to be a temporary designation. The idea was that there would be subsequent study of the property, of opportunities and constraints by the property owners, and that a permanent zoning and general plan designation would be put in place at some point in the future. What you see on this map is the zoning of the surrounding areas. This is the current zoning at this point in time. So you can see that in the unincorporated county to the east, we have a combination of A2, which is general agriculture zoning, 1 unit per 5 acres, and that R15 and 20 zoning that also once applied to the study area has been applied by the county to a handful of properties on Valley Hill Road. That's the zoning that's been in place for many years. The general plan designation for those county properties is agricultural, and the actual development of that area is mostly rural residences on parcels averaging about 5 acres. If you look to the north in Lafayette, you see 10 acre zoning. This is 1 unit per 10 acres in the LR10 and 1 unit per 5 acres in the LR5 to the northeast of the site. To the west, you have the Bluffs neighborhood along Joseph Drive, and that's 1 dwelling unit per acre. There's also some vacant land that butts against the Lafayette border that is also 1 dwelling unit per acre that's undeveloped. St. Mary's is also visible at the bottom left on this slide. Afshar mentioned that this is a goal of the town council. It actually has been a goal of the town council for the last 4 years. It's a current goal for 2022 that was just adopted when the council did their goal setting a few months ago to rezone the Bollinger Valley Special Study Area. The study area characteristics have been pretty well documented both in prior development applications and in prior studies prepared by the property owners of part of the study area. It's an area of steep slopes. It has sensitive natural resources, including plant and animal species. It has outstanding visual and aesthetic value. It's quite scenic, and it's acknowledged in the general plan as such. The fire hazard levels are high in this area, and there are other hazards such as landslides and unstable slopes in some parts of the area. There are access and infrastructure constraints, particularly road access to the property is limited. And there is also opportunity in the study area to connect it to the regional trail and open space system. There are a number of properties immediately to the east that are in reserve for Las Trampas Ridge Regional Park. And so there are possible trail connections to that area, as well as to trails within the town of Moraga. The 2002 general plan provides somewhat of a policy framework for the site. The Bollinger Study Area is addressed directly in the general plan. There is a goal, LU6, to preserve the area's qualities and to do a detailed study and area plan before the property may be considered for any development. There are a number of requirements that are included in that in the general plan, and there's a broader framework in the general plan regarding the conservation of open space and resources and focusing the town's growth in existing urbanized areas such as Moraga Center and Ream Center, so that open space can be conserved to the extent possible. And this policy focus is guiding the housing element now, and a lot of the activity that the commission has participated in, the various meetings. We've focused our conversations on rezoning and development opportunities at the Ream Center and in Moraga Center, consistent with the general plan. So the existing conditions in the study area really lend the grouping of the 20 parcels into 3 major groups that you can see on this map. I want to point out on this map that there have been a couple of changes made since this map was originally prepared back in January. This is a direct excerpt from the white paper, and I'll go over what those changes are in a couple of slides. But essentially, there are 3 groups or clusters of different parcel types. We have a slide for each of these 3 parcel groups. So parcel group 1 is an area, actually more than half of the parcels in the study area, but a very small portion of the total acreage is at the end of Joseph Drive. These are properties that are accessed from the Joseph Drive cul-de-sac, essentially, and the extension of that road from the bluffs eastward. Most of these properties have a single family home. There's also an outlier property on Bollinger Canyon Road that is in this group as well, also with the study zoning. The area of these parcels ranges from just under an acre to 3.7 acres. And most of these homes were developed in the late 70s and early 80s. When we presented this to the town council back in February, it included a recommendation to replace the study area zoning with the 1 dwelling unit per acre zoning that applies in the area immediately to the west. Again, given that these parcels are generally about an acre to 2 acres in size. And I'll come back to the 2 parcels with the stars because there is a status change to those we're going to report out on. Parcel group 2, this is the Harvey Ranch. These are properties in the southern end of the study area. There are 4 parcels in total, and they're all under the same owner. The owner is currently working with the John Muir Land Trust to dedicate these properties as open space. Given the conditions on these properties, the fact that they're in common ownership, and the fact that the owner intends to dedicate them as permanent open space, we are calling this parcel group 2 and have a recommendation to zone that with the non-MOSO open space zoning district. That district, by the way, is used for open space that is not covered by the 1986 Moraga Open Space Ordinance. And you see it in quite a number of places around the town that are undeveloped right now. Again, the town council concurred with this general approach in February when we brought this to them. So that leaves parcel group 3, which is the largest of the parcel groups. At the time this map was prepared, it consisted of 5 parcels with 4 owners. One of those owners controls the 186 acres on the eastern side of the study area that was previously proposed for residential development. All of the parcels in this group are over 5 acres, and the existing uses are agriculture and rural residential. We presented 4 options for this area to the town council for discussion, and you can see them laid out here. Essentially 1 unit per 5 acre, 1 unit per 10 acre, non-MOSO open space, or 1 unit per acre. Following the conversation and feedback from the town council, the general feeling was the 1 unit per 5 acre designation, which we're calling rural residential, was the best fit for that area. I wanted to point out that 2 of the parcels at the end of Joseph Drive are being moved from parcel group 1 into parcel group 3 at the request of the 2 property owners on these respective parcels. Both of these properties, they do happen to be the largest parcels in group 1, and they each have a single family home. The parcel on the northern end has a vineyard and is in agricultural use, but both property owners expressed interest in having that rural residential zoning as being more reflective of their vision for their properties and the current uses of their properties. And so staff is moving those 2 into parcel group 3 so that they also will get the rural residential zone. So this is a composite zoning map. This has been edited to show the 2 parcels that are at the end of Joseph Drive in the rural residential zoning district. This is what the map will look like once the zone is in place. So you'll have the western fringe with the residential parcels in the 1 unit per acre. This the ranch area in the non-MOSO open space, and then the RR rural residential, which is the remainder. And that is the same density that's mapped to the east and the same zoning density that's mapped to the east in the county and to the northeast in Lafayette. It is less dense than the zoning that's on Valley Hill Road to the south and southeast. So the new rural residential zone will apply to 270 acres. The zoning text is attachment B to the staff report. It's relatively short. It's about 3 pages. It lists permitted uses and standards. The intent of the zone, you can see written out here on the slide. The intent is to promote a rural character by providing for very low density single family residential uses, agricultural uses, and preservation of the natural environment consistent with the general plan. So this zone is being mapped on 7 parcels at 5 units or 1 unit per 5 acres. And given the parcel configuration and the fact that some of the parcels are already developed, the build out, if every single parcel was to develop to its maximum of 1 unit per 5 acres, would be about 50 units. That is theoretical. There's nothing proposed there right now. So it's theoretical if the area was to be divided into 5 acre lots. In terms of the uses and standards that are in the proposed rural residential zone, there are various permitted uses. The key here is that single family homes are permitted in this zone. They're not conditionally permitted, they're actually permitted by right. In the MOSO open space and non-MOSO, those are conditional uses. So that makes this a residential zone. Agriculture is permitted in this zone, and dog care and training, and there are a number of other uses that are allowed in all residential districts. We've spoken about the 5 acre minimum lot size. I want to point out that planned developments are permitted in this zone, so that allows the number of allowable units on a property to be clustered on a more accessible or flatter part of the property in order to maximize open space conservation and also protect the natural environment and limit grading. So there are opportunities to concentrate the density in a more limited area. The zoning text includes setback standards, street frontage standards, lot depth and width standards. It also includes a series of studies and analyses that are required for any future applicant for a planned development or a subdivision within the RR zone. So in creating this new RR zoning district, we have to go through the entire municipal code and delete references to the study district because that will no longer exist after this district is created. We also need to add references to the new RR district in the appropriate locations. I would describe that as really more of an administrative or housekeeping type of edit as opposed to something substantive. There are a few substantive edits under animal keeping. There are some special provisions that are included for animal keeping in the rural residential zone that are consistent with the MOSO and non-MOSO open space zoning districts. Since the staff report went out for your initial meeting, which was scheduled for May 17th, staff has had a number of conversations with some of the owners in the area who pointed out that the definition of agriculture in the existing Moraga Municipal Code is somewhat limited and could be a hindrance to existing agricultural operations, specifically the vineyards that are at the end of Joseph Drive, and pointed us to a number of other communities that have somewhat broader definitions of agriculture. As a result, we're proposing an amendment to the municipal code that would broaden the definition of agriculture to include the redlined text that you see added here. So we would specifically note that processing of the products that are grown on site is a permitted use. And that includes accessory uses for packing, treating, or storing produce. There are some limits on agricultural activities that would not be permitted, including cannabis, slaughterhouses, and so on that you see listed here, more intensive or potentially objectionable agricultural activities. I want to point out that this definition change is not directly related to the replacement of the study area zoning with rural residential, but rather something that is in the interest of some of the property owners, not just in this area, but throughout the town, who seek to create agricultural uses on their properties. This same definition applies in residential zones as well. So if you're in the 1 dwelling unit per acre zone, agriculture is a permitted use and would be subject to the same definition. As we're amending the zoning regulations, we are also amending the general plan. State law requires that the zoning is consistent with the general plan, and we therefore must remove the study designation from the general plan. We're also including the new rural residential designation on our general plan land use map. We're taking out goal LU6 and policy LU61 from the 2002 plan, which directly apply to the Bollinger Canyon study area, since that study area will no longer be mapped. And there's an implementation measure that's also identified that will be removed. I mentioned the general plan map will be amended. I think in going through the general plan, it becomes apparent that it is a 20-year-old document, and it is in need of updating, not just for Bollinger, but for a number of the other things that are happening in the town right now, including the housing element. So this is the beginning of the general plan amendment process. We will be coming back to you when the housing element is adopted with additional changes to the general plan that recognize some of the new land use designations and densities that are being considered through that process. So there will be additional amendments coming. This is the final slide, just to give you a heads up on what's coming. We have a hearing with council tomorrow evening on the same topic area. We have started work on the EIR for the housing element and related rezoning and the Bollinger Canyon rezoning. So that's all in progress. The EIR will be released this fall, as Afshar said, and we anticipate that the final general plan and zoning text will be brought to the Planning Commission around December of 2022. And we do have a statutory deadline to complete the housing element by the end of January 2023. So we're working toward that deadline. With that, I'm happy to answer questions and take comments, and we look forward to your comments tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
To the chair.
Commissioner Mead, Director Mead, sorry.
I'd like to take a little bit of a recess. The internet went down at the council chamber where the meeting is being conducted. And the reason I would like to take a break is to allow us to try to fix that. So we can have public, so that the public can access the meeting and provide comments. So if we may take a 10-minute break and come back at 7:10.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
See you in 10 minutes. Okay, so we are at the time, but I've been informed by staff that our tech issues continue. Director Hamid, do you want to just briefly let us know what's going on?
Yeah, we have, the internet is actually down at the chamber, and it may be because of the heat wave. So that means in terms of conducting a public meeting, the public does not have access to the meeting tonight. So what we are going to do, we have contacted our tech help. So let's pause for another 15 minutes and come back at 7:30. And we'll try to make a plan at that time. I'll work on a plan B at that time.
And so while we're on a pause, we're allowed to dance and things like that, right? All good? Okay.
Pause means turn off the camera and turn off the mic. Oh, it says from Alexis Maple, I'm part of the public and have access.
That may mean though to the Zoom meeting. I think what you're referring to, Director Hamid, is the fact that the live stream is down. Is that?
The live stream is down and CCTV is down. So,
Which is technically where the public meeting is taking place, though we're all on Zoom.
correct. So we need to just probably take a pause till 7:30, and hopefully we come back at that time and can work on this.
Okay.
So you may please turn off your cameras and mute, and then we'll come back at 7:30. Thank you for your patience.
And we have a lot of folks that are here in attendance, so I will just apologize, and we will try to get this resolved for you. Thank you for. So we are now at 7:30. If any of my commissioners are back, if you wouldn't mind turning your cameras back on. So I understand from staff that the issue is still not resolved. And I do know that we have a significant number of people who are here in attendance on the Zoom meeting. So Director Hamid, are you able to give us the most recent update on what's going on?
So I know that our tech help is working with staff to try to get the internet resolved. But if it isn't, if it's out of our control and it's really just a Comcast issue, we may not be able to do anything about it. So we're still working on it. I'm trying to get an update. We may have to continue the meeting to tomorrow. If we do that, I would just like to take a straw poll to see if commissioners are available tomorrow at 4 p.m. Will that work? I know some of you work, so that's why I'm asking for a straw poll. Will
Director Hamid, correct me if I'm wrong. I think part of the reason for trying to get it in an earlier than our standard hour is because the council meets at 6 to also consider this item, and they can't.
6:30 tomorrow.
6:30.
And your recommendation to council is important, as well as the public input. So we're still trying to work on this.
I'll pull Commissioner Bodie. Are you available tomorrow at 4 or 4:30 for a meeting?
Unfortunately, I'm not tomorrow, no.
Okay, we need 4 for a quorum. Let's see, Commissioner Davis, are you available tomorrow at 4 or 4:30?
Probably. I'd rather just hang on tonight and see if we can't get it to happen, but if I have to, I could do 4:30.
Okay. Commissioner Helber, are you available tomorrow at either 4 or 4:30?
Unfortunately, no, I have a prior engagement.
Well, then that puts a nail in it unless somebody else is available that is not here tonight. Director Hamid, should we give it another 15 minutes? Should we give it longer than that? What are your thoughts?
Susie, I see that you've just come on. Can you give us an update?
Okay, so let's see, is my microphone still working for you?
Yes.
Okay, I have, Joe, hang on one second. I've restarted the modem. I can see you on Zoom, but we haven't been able to redo the live stream yet. So we are not on CCTV. We are not on live stream. And when I just joined Zoom again, it said recording. So I think it was recording the whole time I was blacked out. No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming, Susie, that it was recording, but the main problem is the live stream.
Right. Right now the internet's back up and I have Joe on the phone and we were trying to see how to restart the live stream. Looking at, do we need to make a URL because that live stream link ended? And that's what we're doing now.
So let me ask this question, Director Hamid. I know that this problem occurred, I think, 2 or 3 meetings ago, and my memory was that we were able to proceed, but I don't know, we were not able to proceed.
No, we have to conduct it in a public manner according to the Brown Act. And I think at that time we resolved it a few meetings ago.
Okay.
So we do need that live stream.
Commissioner Helber, I see you waving your hand.
My recollection is the Zoom wasn't accessible to the public, which is the platform that the public can interact with us.
Mhm.
But the CCTV is a, for lack of a better, it's a display that they can't interact with us. So if they can access the Zoom, and we know the public is on the Zoom now, do they not have an opportunity to participate?
That's my memory from what the town attorney told us as well, was that that if we were able to continue the meeting on Zoom, which is where it was noticed the meeting was taking place, that's sufficient, and that the others are a nice to have for transparency, but not required for the meeting.
Okay, I will see if I can reach her. So give me a couple minutes.
Thank you. So let's take this until 7:45 and everyone come back. Thank you again, everyone in the public, for your patience. Very sorry this is occurring.
All right, again, back in the IT room, they were talking to me, so I'm here by myself. So, yeah. Okay, you want me to go to www.
And please, everyone, don't forget to mute.
So I should go review. Let me go mute this mic out there so they don't hear me. Okay, so now,
Hey, Susie, can you just mute your Zoom?
okay, I'm muting another microphone. All right.
So much better.
All right, I am back in the IT room, and it says passport.com. You want remote support, remote desktop. It's asking me, do I want remote support, remote desktop connection? I don't know which one. There's two choices. Either remote support or remote desktop connection. The website. So when I did that, it asked me if I wanted a training and IT job.
Yeah, so it seems only the live stream URL is down. Oops.
Where I'm trouble finding that site. www.sastword.com. Okay, now I'm here. Okay, so I'm gonna enter my name. Okay, and support key. No, we have to put you on hold and accept our shot. No. Okay. All right. I have Joe on the other line, but I'm trying to work with him. I just got him into. Okay. Zoom is up now on my end, and when I came back in, it said recording. But now it's a black screen.
I can see everybody. Susie, can you mute yourself, please?
I am muted everywhere.
No, I can hear you on that one.
That's because there's a overhead mic, you need to laugh into.
Okay. You're not muted on Zoom.
I can't even see it too.
But Susie, if you can restore Zoom, and if you can restore the ability of the public to phone in or join you.
I can't,
You can run forward with it.
I cannot even see Zoom to go in to see if you guys are there. I can't see Zoom to unmute myself.
You're blocked out.
Yeah,
Even though you restored kind of sort of limited internet.
yeah, I'm just trying to see. We weren't done doing the internet, so was still working on it.
Well, I'm worried that the internet is a bigger Comcast cable problem.
Well,
Okay, so 7:45, Director Hamid, if you can hear me, if you can give us an update on where things stand. She may be actively trying to still resolve this. My understanding is they still are having issues getting it to work on their end. So Commissioner Helber, question to you is, are you available at 5 tomorrow?
Are you able to hear me now? This is Susie at Planning Department. Our internet just came back up and I believe I can get people back into the room. There are attendees waiting.
Sounds good.
Okay, we need all the commissioners to come back on, and we are still recording on Zoom.
All right, Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Bodie, are you still with us? See Commissioner Davis and Bodie. All right, so let me go back over to my notes. Where exactly did we leave off on our public hearing? I think we were about to go to public comment.
Chair Hillis, I had just completed the presentation and had asked if there were any comments from commissioners before we took public comment.
Thank you for the reminder. Commissioners, do we have any comments on or questions? I'm sorry, questions to staff on the presentation? Comments later.
Of course.
Commissioner Davis.
Mr. Miller, I have a couple of questions. One of them I think starts with before your work, but I don't know that. I know that the town has been sued over the issue of rezoning, taking this out of study. Is there any aspect of any of those suits that has a bearing on the discussion tonight?
I think I need to defer to Director Hamid on that.
I can resolve that. That was a separate project that was resolved many years ago. The appeal is over tonight. We are just looking at the zoning and the action that is before you.
Okay, I was referring to the suit just 3 years ago, but okay. So is there anything coming out of those cases that influences or informs the discussion tonight? Is my question.
It is my understanding it does not.
Okay, thank you. That could have been important and I would have wanted to know. If I may, I'd like to ask a couple things about revised attachment C, Charlie. And in the very first part, chapter 8.04, I see that we have a broader, better defined definition of agriculture, which I personally welcome. And I see that tilling of soil and dairying and livestock are still included in agriculture. And then we come down to a term that I suspect will become very relevant when there are more houses in the neighborhood. The very bottom line may be objectionable. Is objectionable a legal term? Is it defined anywhere? And what does it mean?
Yes, this is a definition. Once we have an actual application, then we usually conduct a environmental review. And through the studies, through analysis, it will be better defined and developed, and it's on a case-by-case basis.
On case-by-case for the agricultural use or by the house being built? I don't understand. It sounds to me like any neighbor at any time could object to somebody in Bollinger Valley having a cow because of either odor, well, because of odor, or object to somebody rototilling a field because of dust. How is it that is not the case?
Again, this is already being conducted in Bollinger to some degree.
The agricultural, you mean the agricultural uses?
It's all agricultural uses are already being conducted. And when we have, what I believe you're talking about is code enforcement. And when we have a code enforcement case at that time, we would take a look at it like we do with all projects that we get complaints about. And we would have to take a look at it on the merits of the complaint.
Okay, so this wouldn't necessarily be a project is my concern. This language is written broadly enough that at any time, it appears to me that at any time, any neighbor who did not like listening to cows at night, cows don't say anything at night, by the way. Anyway, chickens at dawn. Any neighbor who doesn't like chickens at dawn could say they have an odor, which they do, and could object. That would be, oh yeah, an objectionable issue. At what point does this become clearer?
At the point of code enforcement, when we get a complaint.
Okay.
If I if I can add, I mean, I think it's an interesting question, and it's a legal question, and one where we would want the town attorney to weigh in, and that question may come up tomorrow when the council is discussing this. So I mean, you know, we can bring that question forward. In some instances, I mean, I think the term is subjective just by nature, but there could be performance standards that are measurable that are included that address when is it significant, and things like the number of animals that a household is able to have per acre, which are later, you know, that they're part of the town's ordinance, are designed to come up with what that threshold is and what that measure is for when something becomes objectionable. So I would say it's in part looking for where those standards are elsewhere in the municipal code.
I would agree with that, but that's actually not what this clause says. It says that you cannot do any of these things if they are objectionable. I mean, that's really what it says, isn't it?
Yes,
I mean,
but definitions are
show me where I'm
typically
wrong.
written through the chair. Definitions are typically written in, and this is a definition. And
Yes, it is.
a definition doesn't cover technical areas. So when we have a complaint or when we have a project, we will take a look at it at that time. And based on an analysis or review or visits, it will be determined at that time. Definitions are not designed to cover code compliance or technical issues that may arise during.
I can ask a follow-up on this. I'm sorry to step on your toes here, but I do see Commissioner Davis's point, and this does to use the word objectionable, doesn't say objectionable to whom. I'm wondering whether or not
For any basis
to change the or any other industrial use which could be reviewed by the zoning administrator, just to make it specific about who it is that is reviewing the use. So somebody who lives in the adjacent area could protest, but the zoning administrator, who would think in this case would be Director Hamid, would be able to review to see whether or not there was substance to the complaint. Is that, Commissioner Davis, would that resolve your concern?
it would certainly help. As this is written, it would be impossible to till the soil, potentially, or to harvest, or to raise cattle. And all of those uses are made in that valley at this time. And unless this only applies to new uses, which it doesn't say, I would be concerned. And I think that at least two of our vintners had exactly that concern in the correspondence we've received. If this said their objection will be reviewed by the planning director, that's helpful for code violation. And if it said that this applies to new uses, not existing uses, that would also be helpful. But it doesn't say either of those, not yet.
That sounds like a reasonable accommodation, and that would be a change that I would support.
Through the chair, I just want to explain. The zoning authority already has, the zoning administrator already has authority. So adding it to each and every definition in the zoning code would, would create a redundancy. The zoning administrator already has authority to do and to carry out those actions and what we already practice.
The zoning administrator has authority over new projects, not over the existing in the same way. I'm concerned about an existing use
Correct,
no longer being allowed
correct,
because now they have a neighbor.
correct. Commissioner Davis and I've already addressed that and said that that would be part of code compliance. And so we would follow the protocols for code enforcement if it's something existing, and then, work through the process at that level.
Okay, please tell me why putting in a new phrase, a new paragraph in our ordinance that says, or any other industrial use that may be objectionable because of odor, smoke, dust, and fumes, doesn't specifically give a person the right to object. What could you adjudicate at that point? If the guy has 6 cows, 4 dogs, whatever it is we allow, the guy has got whatever's allowed, but there is an objection. This clause says I can object, and you would have to agree. This is not technical. It's not even legal. It's just plain English. This is not well written because it doesn't protect existing use. And that is exactly what the captains are worried about.
Commissioner Davis, I think your point is well taken, and I think I would reaffirm my support of adjusting that language once we get to the point of motions.
Okay.
And we'll see whether or not our colleagues agree. Did you have any other questions or comments for staff? Or
Do please. I don't think they're in this packet. They are on the 4-page handout. Oh, the agenda. They're on the agenda. Second page. Actually, I noted that I really liked some of the points made. Let's see, I know there's a question there. Lines 36 through 40 on the second page. Property owners also requested. Okay, now this ties back to what we've already discussed. Thank you. No, I believe that is really the only salient issue I had. Thank you. Thank you both.
thank you, Commissioner Davis. Any other commissioners have any comments that they'd like to share? Commissioner Polsky.
Thank you, Chair Hillis. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for the presentation. Again, they're always very insightful. Can you talk a little bit more about the bluffs and that development? It looked like, or the zoning was 1 unit per acre, and it looks like it was developed at a denser, at a higher density. Can you give a little bit of history?
That's correct. Sure. Yeah, the Bluffs was initially subdivided when that was in the county. So at the time it was subdivided, it would have been subject to the R15 and R20 regulations that the county had in effect, which would have allowed the 15 and 20,000 square foot lots. So you have an existing development pattern that includes lots that are smaller as well as lots that are somewhat larger, including some that are an acre or more. So the zoning in a way is essentially saying the pattern in the Bluffs is frozen and we're not looking to create any subdivision potential. The lots that are there now are basically grandfathered in, they're legal lots, but they would not be, you could not create them under the zoning that applies there today if that was newly subdivided.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to correct myself. I keep saying comments. I'm sorry. My apparently my coffee is worn off. I mean questions. Commissioners, any other questions for staff? I see shaking of heads. I do see that we have the Fire Chief Winokur, and I believe I saw another representative from MOFD on the line.
Chief
And-
Isaacs.
Chief Isaacs, thank you. If I can direct some questions to them, I do know, or to our staff, I know that when there was a project in Bollinger Valley that came up in the past, I know that MOFD had some concerns. And I'm just wondering if staff has discussed the changing of zoning with MOFD to see if they have any concerns with the potential maximum build out that we're discussing in the new zoning classification.
Yeah, through the chair, MOFD has been part of this process, as well as the police chief, as well as public works, which includes engineering. So they are, we've been working through them. When we say staff, we mean the entire body of staff, not just planning staff. So yes, we have been in discussions with them.
Thank you. And Chief Winokur, I see that you've taken yourself off mute. Just wanted to see if you had anything else you wanted to add to that.
Just amplify the comments that we have been involved where is appropriate to the degree it is appropriate. However, when it comes to land use planning, that is quite simply not in our lane. When we start to see projects that derive from whatever land use planning decisions are made, that's the point that we start to apply the fire code to the conditions of those projects, not to the subdivision of the underlying land. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any other questions from commissioners before we open up for public comment?
I've just got one. And I thought that presentation was outstanding. And I also spent a few minutes with Planning Director Hamid yesterday, and most of my questions, and I got some excellent context as well. The one thing I thought of after we spoke is the rural residential zoning designation. Is that only to be applied to the study area, or are we thinking this could potentially be applied to other areas in the future as well? Or is this a one-time use only?
Yeah, I can take an initial shot at responding, and Director Hamid may have some additional comments on this. At this point, we're only seeing this as a designation for the study area. There's no reason it couldn't be applied in other parts of the town. The town is looking at doing a complete update of the general plan in the next couple of years. And since we're creating a new rural residential general plan map designation, we could look at applying that in other places. I think because you have the MOSO open space and the non-MOSO open space, the need for RR in other parts of the town is pretty limited. So there would be, and because of the Housing Accountability Act, it would be difficult to apply that to areas that are already zoned for 1, 2, or 3 units per acre. But, there's no reason if there was an opportunity to map it somewhere else that we couldn't.
Got it. Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions before we open for public comment? I think that was Commissioner Hulber waving his lights on. Yes, okay. At this time, we will open the public comment portion of this meeting as they pertain to this particular item. If anyone from the public wishes to speak on this item, please utilize the raise hand feature of this webinar and we will call on you. And remember to state your name and address for the record. You will be given 3 minutes and Director Hamid will help me keep track of 3 minutes. Let me just be sure, Director Hamid, your screen is frozen. Are you still with us?
My screen is frozen, but I am able to participate. I'm able to listen, and I will start my stopwatch with the first attendee.
And I see Susan Captain, it looks like was the first to raise her hand. And you are here, so if you can take yourself off mute and you can begin speaking.
Hello, good evening. Do you hear me?
We do hear you.
Very well, thank you. My name is Susan Captain, and I'm on, Sal and I are on 1969 Joseph Drive. We are subject land number or letter H, which has moved from the zoning that was supposed to be, which is R1 to the RR. I noticed that Mr. Miller showed the agriculture definition, but I wanted to know if his presentation will be available for us to take a look again to the definition. Because I think I agree with Mr. Davis there that agriculture is kind of unique. You might be able to remove the cow if it smells. You might be able to remove, do other things. But when you're growing crop on site, it is kind of difficult to kind of say, okay, we're gonna, if somebody complains, we're just going to shut down. It is very difficult to do that. In agriculture, things have to happen to get your crops done. So there are, that's what we call normal and regular procedures that happen in agriculture. And when we were zoned as Mosa open space, primary use is agriculture. Secondary or conditional use is residential. That means when the town at that time in 2008 signed the paper to say, yes, you can do what you're doing. Basically, you can grow grapes or you can grow any crop on site. But to process it, I think if I was in residential, it might have been an issue for zoning to allow me to do what I'm doing, which is processing my crop on site. But because of our zoning, which is agriculture primary and residential secondary, then that's how I was able to do it. But now I'm going to be residential and rural, where agriculture is allowed and residential is allowed. So there's a big difference, at least from my perspective. And that's why I had to make a point in trying to get that resolved. So even to me, rural residential might be an issue. But if we change the definition to be able to accommodate our what we've been doing for the last 17 years.
We are over 3. We're at 3:15 now.
I'm really sorry. I just wanted to know if we can get a look at the presentation for Mr. Miller. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for going over time.
Yes, through the chair, we can, the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation will be available. It will be posted by tomorrow morning. And the agenda packet is already available on the town's website.
So thank you very much for your comments. So next for public comment, I have David Griest, and I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly. Please take yourself off mute.
Yes, hi, this is actually Kelly Griest. David is my husband. I live at 1970 Joseph Drive in the Bluffs neighborhood. And that is on the map, parcels that are designated M and parcel I. And my comments are really brief. I wanted to thank the Ms. Hamid and staff for visiting my property and discussing, looking things over kind of live with me. And I wanted to express my appreciation to the staff for having considered my input as to parcel M. And then I have a question about the agricultural use, and from the discussion that preceded the public comment, I do get this question probably won't be, or certainly won't be answered tonight, but I wanted to include my question in the comments. So it is about the definition of agricultural use. Would that include appurtenances such as equipment sheds or water storage tanks? And if so, would there be places on the properties where these types of agricultural accessories would be prohibited? I just wanted to note my questions. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and I will bring back to staff some of these questions when we get to commissioner comments. So please just be patient and we will get to that. Just want to be sure we can move to other comments as well. So thank you so much. I see, it still feels like romper room. DB1, which I think may be Dave Brazzoni. You've been moved over. Feel free to start, and Director Hamid will be keeping time.
Yes, good evening, Dave Brazzoni. I have a couple comments. First of all, I'm all for the captains, getting the use of, proper designation, but keep in mind, all of those developments at the end of Joseph Drive have already been subdivided. Okay, and a lot of these units are, or a lot of these lots are 1 acre, or they're definitely, most of those developed parcels are less than 5 acres, which is the density you're applying to our property at Indian Valley. And no other property in the town has had this unilateral designation placed on a property like it is being placed on our property right now. And that's, and we've gone through years of, explaining situations. Our property is similar to the Bluffs, and it's most certainly more level and less visible than the end of Joseph Drive. And if that has a Moraga designation of 1 dwelling unit per acre, but actually developed at 3 dwelling units per acre, ours should be treated similarly. Keep in mind also that the general plan under IPK 7, Bollinger Valley, Bollinger Canyon Special Study, one of the primary topics there was coordinate with the property owners to, get a proper designation. And town staff has not been doing this. If you recall ancient history, we submitted an application and a study back in 2003 as the general plan designated. We spent millions of dollars on studies and EIRs that categorically are contrary, and this is not a swipe at Barry, but he frankly did our property a disservice, stating what the characteristics are that are really, like I said, our property is more level and similar to the Bluffs, and it's not any worse than the end of Joseph Drive, and we should not be treated the way we're being treated. The proposed changing of the permitted uses, you are degrading and restricting our ability. You're adding new definitions to agriculture. So this is where I'm coming in, similar to what the captains are saying. Our property is 186 acres, 187 acres. And you're looking at our property like we're going to be able to have a residential development. Frankly, with the 1 dwelling unit per 5, even if it is permitted, that density designation basically prohibits our ability to bring in any kind of utilities, whether it's water, whether it's sewer, whether it's PG&E, whether it's whatever. With that very low number of units, you are precluding our ability to develop our property. And then when you look at the Bluffs area, which is, we call it our Munger property, that is one of our parcels that is undeveloped, but
You're
it
at
is.
3:15 through the chair.
Thank you. We do have property there that is undeveloped, but we will not be able to develop it because we won't have access and we can't bring the utilities in.
Thank you very much for your comment. I'm seeing Kelly Grice, or did you still have a question, or did you just not put your hand down? There we go. Any other questions or I'm sorry, any other public comment? I am not seeing anyone else raising their hand. So let's take this back. I'm closing public comment. And at this point, we'll now, I can appropriately say, it's time for commissioner comments. So are there any commissioners that have any comments on the item? I see Commissioner Davis.
Hillis, for the record, I think it's worth noting that 3.5 years ago, when we looked at this property last, we already knew from the owners that a 50-unit build wasn't financially feasible. This is not new information to the town. I don't say that because I am advocating one way or the other, but I do think that it's information we already knew and should have planned with accordingly.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I see Commissioner Polsky has his hand raised.
Thank you, Chair Hillis. A follow-up, I think, to Commissioner Davis there. Is there a way to hear more than 3 minutes from Mr. Bruzzoni? I feel like, I am a fairly new commissioner and have been trying to get myself up to speed as quickly as I can. But 3-minute increments of one of the major landowners in the town just doesn't seem like we're doing it justice. And I would love to hear more so I can make better decisions and understand things a little bit better.
Polsky, this is where I'm going to have to say, unfortunately, we're not singling out any one landowner, and even though Mr. Bruzzoni, his family does own the majority of the acreage, there are multiple other landowners. So we're talking about this collectively rather than singling out any one developer or owner. And if we provided more time to one, we would provide more time to all. So unfortunately, though, I do agree that hearing more of the perspective of the Bruzzonis would be something that would be definitely educational. But my understanding is that's something that we need to take that would need to take place in our own personal time.
Okay, understood. I mean, quick comment, I would say it would benefit the public to hear all of that. And so I guess my comment then on this study session here would echo Commissioner Davis in that I struggle with the feasibility of providing the landowners to build on their land, and it feels like we are putting undue burdens on them. This kind of goes back to my comments on the Moraga Center plan and Ream Center, and we have a severe housing crisis in California, in the Bay Area, and in Moraga. We have been told that we need to build things. I understand that this is not part of RHNA necessarily, but there is a big struggle here with preserving the nature of the area, but and there have been concerns raised about fire and access, and it just seems like that's not going to change if we don't allow a developer to again make profit and spend on infrastructure. So I would, just being new here and still learning a lot, I would just like to raise the issue that we should try to do things. We should try to balance the semi-rural nature of this community with also letting development happen and doing it in a smart way. And so I kind of struggle here, and I don't know if I'm being particularly articulate, but want to get across that let's see this community thrive and grow as it should. So I'll pause there and let others talk.
Thank you, Commissioner Polsky. And I see Commissioner Davis has another point.
Yeah, no, question of you, Chair Hillis. You mentioned a moment ago that you did not see other members of the public wishing to speak. Is there anything that precludes, under the Brown Act, is there anything that precludes giving anybody who wants to speak a second time?
I think out of fairness, it's the way that we laid things at the beginning of the meeting and when we initiated public comment. It is essentially, I think, the rules of the meeting as established by the chair. So if there were a majority of the commissioners that were interested in hearing additional commentary, I would have to say that we could do that, but we would have to be fair and equitable to everyone, and that's just where things could get out of hand. So my suggestion is that we continue on with commissioner questions. I believe that the appropriate time for many of the comments that Commissioner Polsky addressed about wanting to hear more from one of the specific landowners here is if an application were to be submitted, many of those questions could be answered at that time. Additionally, if we if you have other specific questions about the history of the property or the family's use there, you could also directly reach out to the individual and ask those. So my strong feeling is that we should continue on with the 3-minute, but I am open to that if there are a majority that are interested in hearing more, or reopening public comment and hearing more from all of the landowners in this area.
I would support Commissioner Polsky's request that we hear more from Mr. Brazzoni.
Hear more from everyone.
Correct. Thank you. Hear more from everyone.
And Commissioner Bodie, Commissioner Halbert, do you have any thoughts on the issue?
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. But to your point, right, you go down a slippery slope. I absolutely want to hear more from the developers. And I made that comment the last time that we were talking about this. Oftentimes when we get this material in front of us, it's presented and laid out in a way that I feel not all parties are being represented. And then we hear a sliver from the other parties, and that really piques our interest. I think this is an appropriate forum to get that information and to get those data points, right? But to your point, Carrie, it does, present us with a slippery slope, because then you do have to be fair and open it up to everybody. But yes, in answer to your question, I would love to hear more from David Brazzoni with regards to the feasibility of building out here and what some options are and what might be, a compromise that he could propose if there is one.
Thank you, Commissioner Bodie. Commissioner Halbert, any thoughts?
I wouldn't object to additional public comment.
Okay, so per the we have a majority that is supporting reopening public comment. At this point, I would like to request that folks keep it to 3 minutes. I think that this is including the folks that have already spoken, to provide them an additional 3 minutes to provide any additional comments that they were not able to address in their last comment, if that is acceptable to the commissioners.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Hillis.
Absolutely. And with that, I see Dave Brazzoni with his hand raised. Please unmute yourself and you may speak, Director Hamid. You can please keep time.
Yep, I've got it.
Thank you. And Dave, you're still on mute. There you go.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank the commission for allowing me to say make some additional comments. I went to the refrigerator and got a beer, so I'm ready. So it could be more than 3 minutes, but first of all, I want to say, you know, in order to be consistent with the rest of the town, our position has been, we should have gotten the same zoning designation way back when that Sanders Ranch got, Palos Colorados and whatever, and that's basically 2 dwelling units per acre. But like I said, the last legal zoning that we had was the county's R15, and that's how, when we developed the Bluffs, when I say we, you know, it was my dad's property, he sold it to some other developers that developed it at R15. And keep in mind, this 5 dwelling unit per acre, you know, that ag zoning is, they generally came up with that because you had to have a well and you had to have septic, and you had to make sure your well is far enough away from your septic, and that's generally how they come up with 5 acres. But so, you know, we've lost our history and background, but our Bollinger Valley can accommodate a significant amount of development. I don't want to come up and mention a specific number, but I've said our property is similar to the Bluffs. And if you want to keep it with consistent with zoning, well, keep it consistent with Moraga zoning. Don't bring up Lafayette. And if you're going to be bringing up the county, then the R15 is the county designation. Keep in mind, even on A2 county zoning, housing is permitted. Now, the uses that the RR is allowing, they are really restricting our agricultural uses. So, you know, we want to build houses there, but you're saying ag is permitted on study designation. And if you look at the new definition of agriculture, what staff is proposing, that is really curtailed. That's really restricted based in comparison to county zoning. Look at the items and issues that are allowed as permitted uses under the county A2, and you'll be able to see that the ag uses that Moraga is now saying they're allowing is being very restrictive. So, you know, I can go into more background, but, you know, keep in mind, the Bluffs designation is 1 dwelling unit per acre, but it was actually built out at 3 dwelling units per acre. And our property is similar to that. I'm not saying we need that, but, you know, the county understood that in order to bring in utilities, that's all utilities, including water. Water and new circulation patterns will make that whole area safer. Not only our property safer and the Valley Hill property safer, it will allow the Bluffs area to be safer. It will allow an extra, you know, access out, even if you're only granting an EVA up and over the hill. So, you know, I just want to thank the commission again for allowing me to say additional words. I wasn't planning on saying additional words, but I really appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Brazzoni. Any other individuals that would care to speak at this time? I do see that we have one person, Michael G, who has asked a question in chat. I can read that question later on, or Michael, do you care to address the commission at this time? I see him raising his hand. If we can move him over. Please take yourself off mute. Director Hamid, if you can keep time.
So I had a few questions. One, in considering all the impacts, can each new home also then build an ADU?
Through the chair, Mr. G, could you please tell us where you live and what your full name is?
I live in the Bluffs. My name is Michael Gibbs.
We can take down the questions. I believe the answer to your question, though, is yes. Other than the question of whether or not each home can have an ADU, do you have any additional comments that you'd like to discuss regarding the zoning changes that are being contemplated?
Right, well, because that was part of the whole thing on the traffic. You know, ADUs, there's going to be more and more traffic as we start adding those into the amount of expected vehicles, because Bollinger's already tough for walkers, dog walkers, bicyclists, you know, close car accidents. I don't know if there's been any accidents. I've almost been in a number. So, you know, not to mention we've already talked about in the fire response. The other question I had was the how is the new traffic going to affect, especially during construction and obviously subsequently, the erosion along Bollinger and Bollinger's quality of the roadway itself. And then the area is already high fire risk, and the projections are that we're going to have ever increasing fire risk in our area. Our insurance, has anybody looked into the question of our insurance company is going to even offer fire insurance in this area or going forward? So those are some of my questions.
Thank you for your questions, and I'll bring up some of those when we go into our comments. Any other members of the public have anything they'd like to address the commission? I think I see two other hands raised. Let's go with Danielle Genestro. Danielle, if you can take yourself off mute, and Director Hamid, if you can keep time, please.
Hi there, this is Danielle Genestro. I'm a resident of 57 San Pablo Court. I've been here for almost 12 years now. And I guess I was just hoping to echo some of Mr. Gibbs' commentary on safety along Bollinger Canyon Road. You know, I think we're kidding ourselves to think that, you know, it will remain unchanged and we won't have more homes. It is Mr. Brazzoni's right to be able to develop some of that. So I'll let you guys figure out the number and the zoning and all of that. But I know I've had a few close calls trying to make a right-hand turn onto Bollinger Canyon from Joseph Drive. I have spoken in the past about how it would be nice as part of development to get some sort of sidewalk feature on Bollinger Canyon to enable us to continue using that area. And just in terms of erosion, you know, I assume someone at some point will be repaving Bollinger Canyon Road. It'd be nice that that would be part of maybe the conditions after the development to pave that area. So just some of those thoughts occur as I'm listening in on the call. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. I see Barry Bear with his hands raised. If we can bring him over into the meeting. Barry, please take yourself off mute.
Okay. I just wanted to build on some additional concerns. If in fact 50 homes are built up there, that is going to be conservatively probably 200 additional vehicle trips on Bollinger, not including UPS, Amazon, Federal Express, contractors, gardeners, garbage trucks, etc. And we already have a serious traffic issue, not only on Bollinger, but if you come down Ream about 3:30 in the afternoon, it backs up so far that people are actually now making a right on Fernwood, working their way down to St. Mary's, making a left and going through the intersection in that direction. It's a huge issue already of traffic. And this development is going to conservatively add additional 200 vehicle trips a day in that area. And there would have to be some major changes in those two intersections to accommodate the additional traffic. And I too am very concerned about fire issues up there, along with police coverage. The landowner certainly has a right to develop that property, but the Planning Commission and the town, and I know you recognize this and I appreciate your service, it needs to make sure that every resident that's already here, and then including our new residents, keep this a safe community in every way possible. And building all of these homes back in that canyon, I question our safety moving forward and the safety of those individuals living back there now and in the future. Thank you very much for your time. I know you take time away from your families to keep Moraga a special place to live. Thanks so much.
Thank you for your comments. Any other public comments before we close public comment? I'm not seeing any other raised hands. Okay, with that, we are going to reclose public comment. And before we open up to other commissioner comments, I promised to direct some of these questions that have been asked back to staff. And I'd like to just give an opportunity for those questions to be answered. Let's see, we've already answered the question from Susan Captain that the presentation will be made available for review. From Kelly Greist, I believe it was. I apologize, I'm butchering your name again. There was a question regarding agricultural use, specifically, would that include equipment, sheds? I was wondering, perhaps Barry, if you can address the language that is being used for agricultural use, because I do believe that it includes equipment and sheds and the like.
I think it depends on the specific feature that we're talking about. If it's equipment, possibly not. If it's a structure that is larger than a certain square footage and is defined as a structure, it would be subject to setback requirements and hillside and ridgeline, regulations. Those are not new. Those exist now. So we're not talking about introducing any new layer of regulation or new standards that wouldn't currently apply. I think, which is the key on that.
And the intent of which I think is where the concern is, the intent of the amended agricultural use language that we have in today's meeting was to try to ensure that agricultural uses taking place on the land now are allowed to continue to take place. Is that accurate?
Agricultural processing was the key, which wasn't specifically mentioned in the current definition. So we've added processing to the definition. And I understand there are some issues with the definition. We'll give that another look. And this is not an issue that hasn't been addressed in almost every other community in the Bay Area. There's a lot of precedent for how to do this in a way that respects the right to farm. And that is the intent here.
Thank you. And to Michael Gibbs' questions, I direct that to Director Hamid. The first one is that whether or not each one of the homes, if there's been no application for this yet. We're just talking about zoning. So what the potential could be, not any actual planned development at this time. But if there were the maximum number of homes built in this area, they would be able to also have ADUs. Is that correct?
Excuse me. Excuse me. The state does permit ADUs. So we would be following state law. So the state does permit ADUs in all residential zoning districts.
And the town has no ability to say one way or another on that. We are required to approve ADUs if there is an application that's submitted that meets our criteria for an ADU.
That's correct.
And if I may, in fact, the ADU could be part of the initial development submission, such that we're already looking at then not 50 units, for instance, but 100, just as we looked at last summer back at the east end of Camino Pablo. So the ADUs could be part of the initial build as well as later additions.
And regarding the question on high fire risk and insurance, do we have any information on, I know that we're not in the insurance business, but do we have any information on whether or not homes in this area are able to be insured?
That is not part of zoning. So that is something that property owners must discuss with their own insurance agencies. And, our task tonight is very focused. We have a policy direction from council. And so anything that is technical would come at a point where we have an actual application.
Thank you. I believe that addresses the questions that came up during public comment. And I see, Barry, you have another comment?
Yes, thanks, Chair Hillis. I just wanted to reiterate, just for context again, when the town council met on this in February, we presented various options to them for the zoning for this area, for this portion that we're calling RR. And one of those was 1 unit per acre. One of those was 1 unit per 10 acres. So there were actually 4 options in total, and they did vote 4-1 to direct staff to develop the text for the 1 unit per 5 acre. So I appreciate that commissioners are weighing in on whether it should be 1 per 1 acre, but we do have direction in this case from the council through a 4-1 vote to develop the text that we've brought before you. Perhaps I should have made that more clear in the earlier slide, but it is less a question about should we go with a different zoning density, as are the provisions of this 5-acre zone acceptable, and are there modifications that are needed? And I think we've heard loud and clear that we do need to modify the agricultural definition, and that will be communicated to the town council when we bring this to them tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And now moving back to commissioner comments. Thank you for appeasing that for a moment. I think I saw Commissioner Helber raising his hand.
Actually, I had a question for staff. Tonight was a study session for us to hear the reports and then to provide guidance and feedback to staff. Is there any particular guidance and feedback other than, our general thoughts that you're looking for?
So,
And are we going to vote on it, or?
no, as I explained in my introduction, this has gone before a neighborhood meeting back in January. All property owners were sent notifications. It then went to town council for policy direction in February. Again, all property owners were notified. We have been reaching out to individual property owners since those meetings, if they should desire. We've received comments. So there's been a lot of input in this already. So tonight is really an opportunity for Planning Commission to take a look at the draft zoning ordinance language, the text, and the general plan amendments that are proposed, and review the drafts and provide input on the drafts that are being presented, the text. And what we will do in terms of the timeline is your recommendation will go to council tomorrow. There is a EIR, and the final EIR will come back. And then in the fall, there'll be another opportunity. But at that point, we hope to finalize all the input, all the comments, and finalize all the text that's being proposed.
Thank you. That was really clear. And I appreciate the red line plans. I mean, the red line text. It seems pretty clear to me. I think the only item we were discussing was Planning Commissioner Davis's question. And Commissioner Davis, if you could remind me what section that was in.
Yes, the very beginning, first page, first paragraph, revised attachment C. It's a new definition for agriculture. And my only concern is that we use a term that's pretty subjective, objectionable, which is in the eye of a beholder, not of a property owner, to define what's allowed or not allowed. And I would like to see us tighten that up. And I think that Mr. Miller has done a good job of accepting the burden of double checking on that. And I'm happy.
And we're only providing guidance to city council, town council, but it sounds like our guidance is perhaps take a second look at that particular text.
Yeah, let's make sure that doesn't leave the town open for suit or current agricultural use property owners open for losing their businesses. Let's keep the past constant and the future fluid rather than the other way around, is really what I'm after.
I think you raised the point clearly, and I think staff heard it. I don't have any other comments, and unless other commissioners had comments that they wanted to discuss further, I'd be willing to support staff's recommendation of text to town council, town council.
And before we move there, I did want to check to see whether or not any of the commissioners have any other comments. And I see Commissioner Davis raising his hand.
I do have a question, if I may, Director Hamid. This is tangential to the matter at hand, but it ties back into the CIP we just did. Is there any plan to straighten out the current 2 3-way intersections with an S-curve between them at Ream and Bollinger across St. Mary's and turn that into a 4-way intersection with 4 aligned streets? I ask that clearly out of the scope of this document, but because it would help satisfy a great number of the concerns that we have heard 3.5 years ago, we've heard tonight, and we'll hear again. If there were an intent on the town's part to turn that into a rational and on-purpose intersection, it would mitigate many of the risks that a lot of the community can describe pretty well. But I don't know that it's in our plan. So I ask, is that something we have even on the drawing board?
So our Public Works Director is here, Sean Knapp.
Yes.
Susan, could you please move Sean into the panelists so he can respond to that?
Sean, please take yourself off mute.
Can you hear me today?
We can.
Sean.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Harrells and all the commissioners. If you could repeat I was listening, but I wanted to make sure I knew which intersection you had mentioned there. So just so I'm clear before I answer the question.
Fair enough. I'm talking about the S-curve on St. Mary's where Bollinger and Ream sort of come together. Is there any plan on our drawing board? I recognize that Edric's traffic circle may have died. Is there any plan on the drawing board to turn that into a rational and well-aligned 4-way intersection? I ask that because that would mitigate many of the concerns we have historically and will have in the future heard a lot about as the Brazzonis try to develop that valley.
The town has extensively looked at this area going back to before 2007, where there was requests from the community, particularly in the bluffs, to increase the safety around the intersections of Bollinger Canyon and Ream Boulevard as they intersect St. Mary's. And so the town's, like as I mentioned, has extensively studied the issue. We do have coming to the council tomorrow night the completion of a conceptual plan up to 30% on a double roundabout project. This is intended to bring the project to a level where we could potentially go forward and look for additional grant funding if that's what the council desires. You mentioned a 4-way intersection. It was studied, but found not feasible to connect Ream Boulevard directly with Bollinger and St. Mary's because of all the terrain issues, property issues, right-of-way issues, creek issues. So the project was separated into improving each of the intersections individually with a double roundabout design. They looked at many other options. But again, the project, we don't have a project. We're in a design study mode. And, as things play out, this could or couldn't be a future solution to improve access to the Bollinger and the Bluff area. But there has been studies, or there's information available on what that would look like in the future and how it would serve the community if that was desired at some point, and there the funding to support it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate hearing that. I'm disappointed to hear that we're giving up on the intersection, but at least the roundabouts might make it a bit safer for folks. Thank you. That fully answers my question.
Of course.
It seems like that's the sort of thing we should discuss coupled with any development plan in Bollinger Valley, because that was a huge issue on the EIR. It was a huge issue for everybody who lives up Bollinger, and it's been a significant issue tonight in just the few people who did speak. I would say that any degree to which we can couple easing the flow on St. Mary's at Bollinger with a Bollinger project, any degree we can take that in that direction would likely enhance success. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis, and thank you, Director Knapp. Any other commissioners have any comments? Seeing none, I can just give a quick commentary. I really appreciated the comments from the captains. As a small wine grower myself, I can appreciate the fact that you plant it in the ground and you can't get anything for about at least 4 years. And so, it is something that is a little bit hard if somebody has a problem after you have invested so much time into trying to get something from it. I do take to heart Commissioner Davis's comments, which I think actually conform pretty closely with some of the comments that I've heard from Director Hamid in the past about the need to eliminate subjectivity where we can. I'm hopeful that there is a way to make the language there, even if it's at a reference to the fact that it goes to, that this should go to the zoning administrator. Part of this is just so that if somebody were going in and reading this specific piece, I could see how an individual could be confused, even though that their confusion wouldn't have the force of law. It might be good public policy to avoid confusion where we can. With that, those were my comments. And I think that Commissioner Helber had suggested essentially that we wrap this up with the endorsement of Commissioner Davis's request, which Mr. Miller has agreed to work on before tomorrow's meeting. Is there any other action that's needed from the commission on this item?
Just tonight would be just a recommendation to town council on the draft language.
Do we have to vote on that?
Yes.
We do. Okay, so
We're making a recommendation.
do I have a motion?
I so move.
I would second.
All right, so let's do a roll call vote. Vice Chair Lester is not here. Commissioner Bodie?
Yes.
Commissioner Davis?
Aye.
Commissioner Helber?
Yes.
Commissioner Polsky?
Aye.
And Commissioner Teal is recused, and I, Chair Hillison, and I, with the change suggested by Commissioner Davis. Thank you very much for everyone that participated in that public hearing. And now moving back to my notes, we are on, I'd like to also thank you, staff, for all of the diligent work you did in putting together all this information. It was very easy to follow the course of a conversation that has been going on for decades. So thank you for your hard work in helping to prepare us for the meeting. And now we're on to routine and other matters. I don't see anything here. And so I'll move to reports.
Through the chair, can we please give about 30 seconds or 45 seconds to allow Commissioner Thiel to rejoin the meeting?
Absolutely.
I'll text him now. And I believe there are other staff here. And they can leave if they would so desire.
Definitely pretty cool. Staff was able to get the meeting up and running again. That's
Good work under fire. Thank you.
I'm glad we're not doing this at 4 o'clock tomorrow.
And while we wait, Commissioner Davis, I have a joke for you. You'd requested one before. There was an explosion at a cheese factory and all that was left was debris.
Not your best joke, man. Oh.
And now that has completely exhausted my material.
Why did so much of the public leave right after that joke? Leave the room.
All right. Well, I'm not sure that Commissioner Thiel will be joining us. Director Hamid, do we have an update from him?
He said that he's
He
joining
is.
shortly. Yes, here we go.
Welcome back, Commissioner Thiel. Commissioner Thiel, do we have you here? I hear him.
Okay. Thanks
Welcome.
for having me back.
So we are on to reports, and I was going to be asking planning commissioners if they had anything to report.
I do have a report.
Please proceed.
Okay. If audio is coming through, do I have video? I'll get video on as well too. Hi. So I was able to attend last Monday's special joint meeting with Parks and Rec and Art and Public Spaces Committee. We met over at the newly turned over Moraga West Commons Park and did more of a kind of a walking tour and a general update on just kind of status and history of the park and the intent for it to be over time populated with sculptures to be more of a destination sculpture park and a resource for, again, art and public spaces in the town of Moraga. We discussed locating a Tony Zurich piece called The Fisherman, which consists of a half head and an arm coming out with, I believe it's a rainbow trout, kind of near where the park comes over and across from the skate park and just over the bridge, kind of bifurcates, kind of middle point looking in that southern direction. Discuss things like access, accessibility, paving, if there's to be lighting, signage, and basically just a general recommendation for its location to the town council. And I believe there were two Buddy Broadwin pieces. One will be a pair, and I think that's to be located at the entrance of West Common Park. And then I believe there's also two helical wind spinners that I believe are getting located or proposed to be located either at town office or town council location. So.
Sounds exciting. Thank you for that report.
Yeah, I'll provide an update when they're looking for installation and be a fun thing to go out and take a look.
Indeed. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Any commissioners have anything else to report?
I'm just wondering if anyone here is planning to go to the Moraga Community, the foundation fundraiser on Thursday at Canyon Club.
Yep.
As
Yep.
Vice President of the foundation, I definitely plan to.
I'm pretty sure Brenda will be there too.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Yep. Just don't say Bollinger Valley.
There you go. Any other reports? Staff, do any reports for us?
Yes, tomorrow evening, council will be hearing the Bollinger Canyon draft text amendments. And we will take your recommendations and comments to them, and also what we heard from the public tonight to them as well. We will give them a verbal update because the May 17th meeting was canceled due to lack of a quorum. So we will just give them an update tomorrow evening. And then just looking ahead, we do plan to bring on June 21st, the draft housing element. Our timeline is that we must submit it to HCD this summer. So most likely by the end of July, we want to submit it to HCD. And then HCD has a timeline that they are reviewing all the housing elements from the jurisdictions in Northern California. So we need to get in line. So it's important that we keep that timeline. And then we'll get those comments back. We'll need to address those comments. And so the 21st of June is a big deadline, and please let me know if you cannot attend for any reason. But that June 21st, we do need a quorum.
Thank you, Director Hamid, and thank you again for all of your work in getting this meeting together. And I know it's going to be a busy week for you with another meeting tomorrow night. And thank you to all of your staff for helping to get everything ironed out so that we could have a successful meeting tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, sure.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion. to adjourn.
Marcus got it.
Commissioner Bodie makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Davis, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The meeting is adjourned at 9:02 p.m. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see
Thanks
you.
all.
See you
Have a
guys.
good night.